Hey everybody, I'm Marcus Hazelwood, and welcome to Clear Haze Exchange. I'm an energy engineer with over 15 years of experience in sustainability and energy efficiency consulting. Many find these topics a little complex, so I created Clear Haze Exchange to help provide clear, actionable insight, clearing the haze, so to speak. We'll cover plenty of topics under the umbrella of energy efficiency and sustainability. Let's get into today's conversation. Welcome, listeners, to season 2 of Clear Haze Exchange, exploring the hidden systems shaping sustainability and operational performance. Today's guest background is both scientist and a sustainability leader. Ila Summitt is a molecular biologist and sustainability leader working to reduce the environmental impact of scientific research laboratories worldwide. As sustainability certification manager at My Green Lab, Ila helps research institutions implement measurable sustainability practices through programs such as My Green Lab certification and the International Freezer Challenge. With over 20 years of experience as a clinical laboratory scientist in academic and biotech environments, Ila combines deep scientific expertise with sustainability strategy to help labs reduce energy use, lower operating costs, and decrease carbon emissions without compromising the integrity of research. Ila, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, I'm. I talked about we talked about just recently before starting this conversation on how we were both at I2SL in Texas last year, which is a big laboratory event. You get a lot. You get heavily involved in the labs and advocating for how to improve. So, what kind of inspires you to kind of really advocate for this beyond the research that you do?
Um, Really, it all kind of started, in the lab myself. I'd been there since college and love being on the bench. And um, it just started kind of noticing when you look around, like, why is there so much waste? We use so much plastic in science. And when I started in college, it was all glassware, actually. We would wash our own stuff and um, partially because of funding, of course. And it was, took more time. We're students. It wasn't a big deal. And then gradually we saw that shift to single use plastics. And it became the normal to be using single use plastics. And at the end of the day, you just see just these bins that are full of waste, and it was normal, which was very strange to me with my background. I came from a family of immigrants, and we're all very conservative about our waste. And then to go to that to science, where we're just kind of using. Um, it was surprising, but also it was the norm, and I didn't really realize it was a problem until kind of comparing it to other areas of life, like, this necessary? So,
Yeah.
just being aware of that really just opened my eyes to a different part of this space.
It's always good to have different perspectives and experiences or backgrounds into the same space because, like you said, different experiences cause you to be a little bit more conscious of certain things that others may not. And so that kind of diversity so valuable, especially in this space. So for people who don't work in labs, may not realize how resource intensive, in addition to waste intensive research environments can be. So what surprised you most when you began looking at labs through a sustainability lens? You talked about the waste piece, but could you touch on the energy piece and what else surprised you about that?
Yeah, we've actually done studies at My Green Lab where we've seen that, labs, they're really energy intensive. They use 10 times more energy than office buildings. It's about 4 times more water, and it's largely because this instrumentation runs, like, 24 hours a day generally. Ventilation needs to be changed out more often. So, compared to a regular office building, this is definitely an area where kind of needs to be a little bit more focused, and it's science. We're scientists, we're innovative, we're trying to change things, do something better for the world, and kind of ironically are using a lot of its resources and not really thinking about what the end product is. So, and the lab is just this area where not only it's high energy use, but like people are using these instruments 24/7 potentially if it's a lab that's running all the time. So specialized equipment, all of that stuff is just adds up, but there is a lot of flexibility in that, and that's a thing I think that we don't always realize, like, little behavioral changes can make huge impacts on savings. Closing the fume hood sash is always, like, uh a classic example of how much energy that can save. That's one that's known to be a huge energy pull for lab environments, so, um just making it easy for scientists to do these things. It's putting some signage up, moving trash cans where they need to be, making it obvious what the next steps are, and not working against each other, um, which is, again, part of behavior change, which is really hard to change people's behavior. It takes a lot of focus and energy and listening to each other, a lot of collaboration.
I was having a conversation with another guest, and where we were talking about coming up to the waste in a cafeteria where you have the decision to make, recycle, compost, landfill. Are the objects in the pictures matching what's on your plate? Because people will abandon it. They'll just say, "Well, I don't know," and just throw it away. The point of that conversation was understanding how we can cater to people with behavioral change so that they don't have to do too much thinking when it comes to sustainability. And so you're absolutely right, is being able to influence behavioral change.
Exactly. Yep. We want to essentially remove those barriers, and there's practices in place like Lean Sigma Six and things that are really helping with that operational efficiency, and sustainability is a big part of that as well. And don't always realize it, but it's there.
Yeah. So thinking about why, sustainability matters concerning laboratories, which is, like you mentioned, a big resource intensive process for developing groundbreaking research, and different technologies. So many people focus on office buildings when thinking about energy efficiency, but why are laboratories such a critical opportunity?
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of these buildings they take up. We've seen case studies where at university campus where there's like 40% of the campus building energy use coming from a laboratory building, even though they only occupy about 20% of the complete campus square footage. So it's a lot, and it's an easy, well, I won't say easy, but it's definitely, like, the biggest target, um, and in the biotech area, they've got a lot of money, they can make these changes, and they are hugely influential for other areas, universities and hospitals, and trying to make some changes, and it kind of goes in a top-down and bottom-up approach, like, we need the regulations in place, of course, but, um, we also need people in the lab who are actually willing to make those changes, and really a lot of times they are. They just think they're not allowed to, and their scientific creativity and innovation is kind of suppressed, and it's kind of their natural place to be to come up with new ways to do their research,
Yeah.
R&D, in a better way, and, uh, often a safer way as well if it's generally, more eco-friendly chemicals, better waste streams, all of it. So,
Mhm.
um and we look at, the office side of labs too. There's the computing aspect as well, which is huge now with AI and everything, but, primarily, we at least try to look for what what can be done easily first by the lab, and then kind of change to bigger projects like infrastructural changes, potentially working with facilities teams, and, um, yeah, start small, hopefully make a huge impact and big.
Yeah, you made a good point or in the beginning of what you said, and it really speaks a lot to the opportunity in lab spaces to reduce and sustain. When you said 40% of the energy use when there's only 20% of the square footage area of a campus from a portfolio. That's just an example, but that's certainly the case in many universities that are focusing on, educating students and building research. I worked at a university myself for a while, and we were analyzing energy use, so EUI, energy use intensity of buildings across campus. And of course, the lab buildings were the highest, 3 to 400 kBTUs, which is units of energy per square foot. And that was per year. So that always stood out to me. These are the most energy intensive users, so it's certainly a huge opportunity, and I love how you explained it because you're right. It's a huge piece, and the waste relates back to energy as well. If you look at the life cycle, there is energy associated with it, both the life cycle of products and into disposal.
I wanted to go back for a second about that energy piece too, just from a lab user perspective of um, understanding like how much energy is being used. If and a lot of times lab spaces are shared spaces or like leased spaces, so they don't even really have a good grasp of how much energy they're using compared to some other labs in the building. So we often encourage labs to start from the very basic level, like get some energy monitors. There's, little plug-in devices. A lot of companies out there selling these that just plug into the socket of the equipment and you can actually see how much energy is being used, all wireless and at different times of the day. And that gives you so much data to work from. Like, okay, do we need this piece of equipment kept on all the time, or can we turn it off at night or when nobody's using it? Is there an automatic timer we can put on it to turn off the instrumentation? Um, you can really start to understand where savings can come from, and they will. You'll see that in monetary, you know, gains, really, or savings, I should say. So, doing sort of an energy audit, I guess you would call it, a really easy way to see what's happening in your lab specifically. If it's one of these where you're not really sure of your numbers and you're kind of paying some rate, don't really know how much, maybe you're paying more than you need to. There's a potential here for really diving deep into the data.
Yeah, that's a really good point. You can't manage what you don't measure, and
Hmm.
so that's a valuable opportunity, and especially like you said, for leased buildings or spaces that are inside of larger buildings. Are they spiking the demand? Demand is a major cost in your utilities. Can you reduce your what is causing the demand? Is your consumption running more than it needs to run? You wouldn't know if you weren't metering it. And it's not that complicated either to do. And with technology, there's so many different ways to make it even easier. So thinking about the hidden systems, um, inside of research labs and what operational habits or systems quietly drive a lot of this energy, if there's any examples that you have.
Yeah, the biggest is certainly fume hoods. That's a huge one. They're pulling out a lot of air. So shutting the sash, the easiest thing that any lab members can do, make sure that's done, put some signage up. There's competitions out there. It's wonderful. It's happening. We see that change certainly in our certification program when we ask, like, do you close the sash and the hoods? Lab members and lab managers alike are making sure that that's done. So it's becoming the norm, which is excellent. Second to that is freezers. These freezers are kind of a nightmare. They used a lot of energy. One minus 80 uses about as much energy as one US household, and that's a lot. And they're running 24/7, right? So like they are constantly having to maintain temperature. Um, and besides that, there's a lot of samples. So there's a lot of freezers. I've seen buildings with what looks like miles of freezers just down the hallways, and some of them not quite full even. But so those are the types of changes that we really look at. Like, what can you do with this freezer? You can clean it, the basic stuff, preventative maintenance. Um, it's surprising how many labs don't do this? And it's just a matter of brushing out the ice, scraping it out. It's not fun. I'm not going to pretend that that's like a job that anybody really wants to do, but it's absolutely necessary as well to kind of go in there once, twice a year, make sure it's cleaned out, kind of brushing coils, things like that, making sure it's sealed properly, and um, also organizing the actual samples in the freezer. That's a huge one. Are they labeled correctly? Is there some sort of an inventory system, or is it like you go to a freezer, open the door, and stand there, and just look for your sample, which is wasting a lot of energy as the temperature's dropping. Other samples are at risk of being in the wrong temperature for too long, so sample integrity becomes an issue. It's really just a cascading effect of negative if we don't take care of these freezers. Um, and there's
Are there
companies.
processes that help mitigate that in terms of organization for different types of research?
Processes for inventory specifically.
Yeah, well, how you store those? 'Cause you mentioned, all these
Hmm.
freezers, some could be empty, some not. I think about this as like
Yeah,
data centers is like sometimes they're not using the racks, sometimes they need them, but they're still running the systems to handle that. Like how are there
yeah.
have you seen any places to where it's a better use of the space, say how to mitigate that?
Yeah, there's definitely I mean, there's programs certainly available, like different sort of limb systems that will, help with that organization. Somebody still has to do the work, right? But, I mean, getting it at least in place and having a digital system, something where you can just where your sample is and what you're looking for in what freezer. It's not rummaging through a few, um, making sure there's like a yearly clean out of old samples if they're not needed. Certainly in academic institutions, samples sit there for sometimes 20 years, and we just hope one day we can use them, but likely we can't. And so having a digital system is definitely useful. I've seen barcoding, all kinds of amazing methods at this point to keep track of samples. It doesn't have to be an Excel sheet. It can be a little scanner. There can be something actually on the freezer that shows you as well, like this is a sample, this is a freezer for this type sample or this study that we're doing. So a lot of operational lab operation groups have some sort of system, but um, some don't, and that's where we usually see the most issues.
You said 40% of universities energy comes from the labs, but they're only occupying 20%. When you talk about freezers and sample storage practices, how much of that is that kind of overall impact to the larger picture of a lab? I know that kind of it may depend on the type of lab, but in general, is it like like 20-30% of that overall lab use?
I don't know exactly about numbers yet because it does depend. Like a biobank is going to certainly need a lot more space. Um, a lot of times it's not even about needing that a lot of space. It's just that we don't throw out the old stuff. So it just sits there. And instead of um, cleaning it out, a lot of times, oh, there's another freezer here. We'll just start using this instead. And so yeah, even having an outside company, usually vendors will come in and just if you sign some sort of contract with them, they can clean it out for you. It's not a huge deal, but then the sample part is still going to be critical for the lab to go through, um, and actually make sure that they're taken care of and um, disposed of properly as needed.
So that high level is obviously the main point is the fume hoods. That's the main primary energy user,
Still
and
the
then
big one.
all these
Yeah.
right, and then all these other things incrementally influence that energy overall as well by whether it's maintenance, understanding the organization, the use of equipment, and it kind of adds up from there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's other instrumentation certainly after freezers as well that use a lot of energy. But those are sort of the big ones. And yeah, just making sure that they're well maintained and having a group that's in charge of that potentially and make it fun, make it
Yeah.
something interesting to do. Yeah.
What are the, I know I've heard of shut the sash, challenges, or shut the sash trendy, I guess, I don't know if you call it just campaign, and then, of course, freezer challenge, and what is the freezer challenge?
Yeah, the freezer challenge is my favorite program because I help run it. It's a program that we actually have been um, in charge of running for since 2017, along with I2SL. So we kind of partnered together to make this happen, and it started as a small, just a small U.S. based competition with a few universities, seeing how much energy they could save by doing certain actions like preventative maintenance and cleaning out samples, all the stuff we just mentioned. And it became a huge international challenge. Now we have more than 36 countries. Last year we had almost 4,000 labs participating. And it's a it's a really nice, I say the 3 Fs, fun, flexible, and free program. Maybe we had a fourth there, freezer, I don't know. Um, it's just a nice program because again, it's easy. It's and it makes it competition based. So, and you can see your score in comparison to other labs live on our platform. So, if you do some actions, you record it, and then you see, oh, this other lab would in the same kind of category as me is uh, is beating us, so we need to step it up. And there's prizes at the end. We have our we give out plaques and make sure everybody's has a shout out and really like feels good about what they're doing. We present awards at I2SL every year, and we've got some winners that come back every year. And it's nice to see that it's not just biotech or it's kind of a almost a 50-50 split between biotech and academia. And then we also have a lot of hospitals and government labs that are starting to participate. And again, simple temperature optimization, improving your organization, just tracking what a lot of some labs are already doing. So, and hopefully encouraging them to do a little bit more and keeping it on a regular cadence.
Yeah, so that speaks a lot to, the last question in this section I had around the role that lab culture plays. Um, it has to either enable or prevent sustainable practices, and like you said, with this competition, getting someone on board will then kind of a champion from a lab or a university to bring it to their labs, to kind of help influence change. So, how would you say lab culture plays a role in sustainable practices?
Yeah, culture is plays a huge role. I think that's kind of our main focus at My Green Lab is to build that culture of sustainability through our programs, and we're endorsed by the UN's Race to Zero, EcoVadis now, the EPA's environmentally approved purchasing program, all kinds of things, and some research centers in the UK as well. So it is kind of both the top down and bottom up approach. We need those regulations in place, but we need boots on the ground to make this all happen. And in labs, we're kind of primarily focused on experimental outcomes and safety, which is absolutely, appropriate, and it should be that way, but sustainability hasn't been a part of that conversation. So now that we're seeing it kind of more embedded in the culture through training, whatever certifications and having that support, it becomes more of the day-to-day operations. And I love seeing when just one person, a few people start championing those practices, others start to follow. There's small green teams that form, and it's just how it works. It trickles around, and it's part of your normal workflow for sure. And we really want to empower scientists to be able to feel like you can make these changes. Doesn't mean you're changing every procedure. We understand that there's, your results matter, that we don't want to change your science. We want to change how the science is being done, essentially, and what um, items are being used and purchased.
Yeah, yeah, it's good. Thinking about someone to champion it, and then also the competitions. I also had experience being working at a university. There's a lot of opportunity where students are eager to compete against other labs, whether it's cross campus, seniors, juniors, different things. It's a competition is always a great way to communicate change
Mhm.
and to help influence change for sure.
Yeah. I think universities are a great place to start because that's really where we're learning these procedures, right? So, introducing students to sustainability practices. There's green chemistry now classes being taught and being implemented in the R&D space. I love that. We didn't have any of that in college. It's innovation and while being socially responsible. So wonderful to see that combining.
What about private organizations separate from uh,
Yeah.
separate from colleges and universities? How does that play out? Is this just as popular, or how do you see that working?
Yeah. It's difficult. It's much more difficult because, I mean, there's tighter regulations, of course, like in a clinical environment or a manufacturing lab. We're not here to change your processes or to interfere with the scientific integrity. So in a lab, I mean, the scientific like reproducibility, of course, is like incredibly important. So changing anything feels incredibly risky. Um, it you don't want to interfere with it. There's QA procedures in place. It feels like a lot of hoops to go through to make sustainability happen. It's really not, again, with simple behavioral changes to start with, and it starts in the R&D space, like before it even gets to manufacturing, like buying the right products, uh, using methods that are more sustainable, less plastic, whatever it might be, more automation. So starting from there, it's definitely doable. I know there's barriers because I've been there. I've been in both types of labs, and it is difficult, but small changes again. Cleaning freezers, yeah,
'Cause it speaks to the bottom line, their dollar, as
exactly.
well, and leading with that for private organizations where they're thinking about revenue, if they're able to utilize these programs to cut, operational costs, then it seems like it would be an easier sell. At the same time, it shouldn't need to be a sell. It should be something that if it's ingrained, it's just an automatic savings and benefit to that organization. We talk a lot about carbon emissions in this space and the word sustainability, where people, in my experience, immediately get this, oh, that's great. I'm glad you're doing that. But the reality is sustainability heavily speaks to dollars more than people even realize. And I think you agree that there's a lot of benefit in understanding what these processes and practices will equal, which is, of course, carbon emissions reduction, but absolutely cost savings.
Yes. Um, in that sense, the biotech industry has definitely taken longer to to have that behavioral change, in a culturally speaking in the lab. It's all financially based, like you said. What's our bottom line? How much of a return on investment are we going to receive for doing these for changing things? And we've done the studies, so we've seen, I mean, the return on investment. It's at least 5 times, in some cases, we've seen much higher. Um, so we want that we wanna keep seeing that initial investment, it's a long-term solution, that's exactly what sustainability means, so we're definitely seeing private companies, finally understanding that and seeing that tangible evidence of this is this is our return. We're seeing it quicker than we thought, and it's becoming more of the standard practice. Yeah, certainly love seeing that and hope it continues that way. And it seems to be even the bigger companies who see other big companies do that as well. There's a little bit of competition there as well. We all want to be doing the socially responsible thing. It attracts employees as well. We want to be working for companies that care about the world and are um, just doing better quality work and more informed.
Yeah, that's good. That leads into the next area that I want to discuss with you is understanding how programs are driving changes in relation to certifications and global initiatives. So My Green Labs is doing just that. And so programs like My Green Labs, they're helping labs measure and improve environmental performance. If you could kind of summarize or in sort of an executive summary or elevator pitch, how does the process work?
Yeah, Migrant Lab certification we've been doing this for a while, and recently we stepped up our game to really meet with some new EU standards about certification and that they need third party verification. You can't just greenwash and say, we're green, we're eco friendly. Those words, unfortunately, mean absolutely nothing unless they're backed up by real evidence and real action. So that's what our program provides. It's essentially a framework for evaluating what labs are actually doing in the lab in terms of sustainability. So we provide guidance and recognition as well. They get certified at different levels, and it's mostly behaviorally based actions that the lab members can do, but there's also certainly a component of infrastructural changes and upgrades that can be made. Um, it's flexible, so whatever the labs feel like they can do within a certain time period, their budgets, all of that, it's really dependent on each lab. So, and several, there's three kind of main, we call them pillars of the certification. There's a survey portion that goes out to the lab members because, again, we really want them to be engaged and understand what's happening in the lab in terms of sustainability. Um, is is there a practice in place? A lot of times they're just not aware, like, oh, we've already switched out all our lights to LEDs, or we have these water saving features already in place. So just informing them is huge. And this is a great tool to see where those gaps may lie between what the lab user thinks is happening in the lab versus what lab managers know should be the case. So we have this whole section that's the bulk of the certification filled up by the lab manager. Again, really nice project management tool. You can see specific actions and mark them as in progress or complete or add notes. Um, and again, there's a survey portion so you can see, like, this is what the lab thinks we're doing. This is what we are doing. Let's fill in that gap and make sure we're all on the same page. And um, I think one of the most impressive tools of our certification is our impact estimator. Um, it's I kind of mentioned a little bit about this at the beginning, where you can measure your energy consumption for certain instrumentation. If you do that, you can enter it into this impact estimator tool, and it translates those actions into quantifiable outcomes. So energy savings, carbon reduction numbers, waste reduction, and you can actually see the impact of your behavioral changes. So that's often very motivating, for
Yeah.
one thing. And, we can demonstrate that these actions are doing something to let's say the leaders or whoever is in charge, and those numbers are really important. So that's been something we kicks off with last year now, and it's been a great tool. We like people, again. It depends on the data you put in. It's got to be accurate data that you put in order to get accurate numbers out. Um, but that's been um, a wonderful tool as part of the certification as well.
Good. So in this season of the this podcast, we're talking about long term um, value, And what I'm getting from what you're explaining with this program is thinking about how are organizations managing their long-term operations. And, you can have a capital project, build a brand new lab or build a fit out for a great, amazing looking lab up front. That initial capital cost investment will be really high. The long term is how long you're in that building, 10, 15, 20, 30, even 50 to 100 years. I mean, this is a long, long time that buildings are in use. And so that operational cost becomes even larger than that initial cost. But how do you translate that to private organizations' thoughts of help us reduce operational costs? What is the angle that you take with the dollar savings piece with what these programs can do? And what are some examples of measurable outcomes that an organization should be able to see? Is it a potential 5, 10% reduction in savings in their operational costs?
Yeah, we definitely already have seen, again, we've only started the impact estimator as of last year, but at least with some of the major biotech firms that we're working with, we've seen huge savings both in energy and carbon, say, avoidance more than anything. It's a strange term, but that's the easiest way to kind of see it all. And money, of course, is going to be the main one that they're looking at. But it's starting to happen, and we've had companies that are using that data now to expand their programs as well into other labs. So it really is a driving force. It's again seeing that data; it's tangible. We can use this uh, to broaden our savings, and hopefully we keep continuing to see that in both academic and biotech space. It's it's slowly happening. Again, having those numbers is a huge part of this. It puts it transforms just a behavioral change into something that you can actually work with and see. It's not just uh, people wanting to save the planet. It's actually doing it.
Yeah,
I love seeing that.
that's good. That's good. So you worked in academic, government, biotech labs, and private. How does sustainability priorities differ between these different sectors?
Ooh, pretty different. I think it's changing though. Academic labs and in schools, there's enthusiasm, there's engagement, but they have limited resources. So, I mean, I personally love speaking to students of all ages. I went to an event recently, and there was 8-year-olds telling me what greenhouse gases are. So they know this stuff already. It's just they need the support to make those changes happen for this next generation. They are fully knowledgeable, which normally, I would have said that's where we need to start, but they're on it already. We just need to educate the adults, I think, more than anything. So that is happening. So that's where industry, I was kind of saying it takes longer. It's taking longer to catch up because it's all based on return on investment and what's going to give us the most faster. We just need to survive. Times are tough.
Yeah,
We get it all. But this is part of that solution. If this is a company that wants to thrive for a long time, um, using your same building space, whatever it is, there's changes that can happen, and we're seeing it like it's certainly feasible. We need those regulations, of course, to be in place and those goals to be part of their overall business plan. So that's it's happening. Not every place sees it the same way, but it catches on, and we're really at a place right now where we're seeing it just take off, and more labs than ever are engaging with us. We have, I guess, over 5,000 labs now in 60 countries working with us, so that's all parts of the world.
yeah.
Europe and UK are certainly leading the way. The US was recently. I'll admit there's some backtracking, but it's we're going to get right back there eventually. And um, so government is more mission driven, of course, but there there is a focus there. It just we're gonna get it back.
So, how can universities and life science companies balance scientific rigor with sustainability goals? So, of course, there's very important research that's being done. But how do you balance that with sustainability goals and being able to do that?
Yeah. You know, they really shouldn't be competing goals. Like, I understand that they are. I mean, facilities teams are going to be, of course, more focused on building systems, HVAC, ventilation. Scientists are more in charge of their daily practices, and so having those align can be a little bit challenging. And I think, of course, that's their different priorities, so it completely makes sense. But that's where at least I've seen um, our programs are actually very helpful. They are bringing together those groups. Um, so before I always, even working with my green lab, I mean, I was at a major biotech company and in the green team as well. And it was exciting to me because as a scientist, I got to work with facilities, EH&S, and some other outside groups, even to just and understand how this all works. How does the building work? Why do we care about these air changes and what that actually means? Um, so it becomes clear once you kind of see it in a big picture, and not of course everybody has to do this in the lab, but I think it's really nice to have programs like this which kind of bridge that gap, and uh, they have those shared goals with data so they can actually have again those results and um, collaborate without compromising their science, which is, of course, absolutely critical.
So, what advice would you give organizations that are trying to improve sustainability without disrupting their research productivity and certainly get involved with the program, the Green Labs program? But what
Yeah.
specific advice would you give organizations?
I think the biggest thing is still engagement and awareness, removing those barriers, make it easy to do the sustainable thing. That will result in the greater success. Your guidance, like this trash can is for this. We're going to start doing this, but you tell us, lab, where you want these things placed. It's not just a matter of somebody telling you how to do it, but you work together. I think I've said it before, but scientists themselves are bringing new ideas forward, and that's when you know that culture is actually shifting. Like they have a say so in their space, and um, that's a huge thing. Now, practically speaking, I guess specifically, I would say better cold storage in general is going to should be the norm. It's getting there. Uh, that's one that's easy, I will say, and a huge impact. So, looking for Energy Star, better running freezers even as well, switching out those old ones. These are all good tools.
That's good. So, in closing, what would you say excites you most about this global momentum around sustainable science? You mentioned a lot of it throughout our conversation, but what excites you most about this?
The scale really of these changes that we're seeing, it just has taken off really with Europe and the UK really having embedding these requirements for sustainability in their grant applications too. So that's a huge step forward. It's something that it becomes part of doing your research from the very beginning. And we have the engagement as a huge piece. We have, I guess, almost 13,000 My Green Lab ambassadors. That's just a free program in 96 countries that just get online and talk to each other about sustainability and exchange ideas. It's not just scientists, it's facilities people, it's everybody. I really like seeing that, and I'll peek in their conversations now and then, and they don't need us to give us the advice because they are all speaking amongst themselves, and I like to see that. They have a place where they're able to get their information and, uh, make those impactful changes and share their monetary savings and carbon, um, savings as well, so, um, it's just it's encouraging to see that the scientific community in general is wanting to protect the environment, and they don't have competing goals. They can reinforce each other. Um, Overall, the scientific discoveries are so impactful, so important, but they're able to do that while improving lives and preserving the planet. So that's absolutely key here. You can make it all happen together. We just forgot our focus for a while and we're coming back.
That's good. That's good. Well, Ila, thanks for coming on and sharing about what Green Labs is doing, the value of sustainable operations inside of labs, and certainly your expertise and insight has hopefully been very valuable to our listeners. Anything else as we close out?
Um, really, just I want everybody to realize that they have a say so. It's gonna feel like you don't sometimes. There'll be a lot of no's, and if you get an immediate no, that means there's more to uncover, and you can still make changes without changing everything all at once. Small things make a difference, so stick with it. Yeah.
That's good. Well, thanks again for joining us, Ila Summit, everybody. And please check out My Green Labs. Check her out on LinkedIn. And if you're involved directly with labs, take a look at what Green Labs is doing. I2SL, a lot of different resources that can help improve and provide a more efficient space and productive space. So thanks again for joining us, Ila. And thanks for listening to Clear Haze Exchange. New episodes drop every 2 weeks. You can catch Clear Haze Exchange on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio, and more. Let's clear the haze about sustainability and energy efficiency together. Subscribe now and join the conversation.